Hi friends, hello, welcome to another wrap-up video. I'm very excited for today because today I'm going to be sharing with you guys what I read in the month of March. So this month I've read 6 books, 1 comic, and 1 play. And I feel like this was a generally good reading month. It wasn't the best, but I had a good few faves in here. So I'm excited to share. Let's just get right into it. So the first book I read in March was Slaughterhouse 5. I thought because it was the beginning of the month, I would try and read a classic. I haven't read any classics this year yet, so that's been sort of a goal of mine to read more. So I thought I would try and read this. And this kind of flopped for me. I did like a lot of like the message throughout this book, that the very like anti-war vibes happening here, and I annotated quite a bit in this book just because I felt like I had commentary on what was said throughout this, but it just really didn't grasp me that much. It kind of confused me a bit. I don't know, some parts it just really lost me, but I definitely don't think it was like valueless. I just don't really think it was for me. I really liked this quote I'll read to y'all because I feel like this kind of sums up what I liked about the book. Americans, like human beings everywhere, believe many things that are obviously untrue, the monograph went on. Their most destructive untruth is that it is very easy for any American to make money. They will not acknowledge how in fact hard money is to come by, and therefore those who have no money blame and blame and blame themselves. This inward blame has been a treasure for the rich and powerful, who have had less to do for their poor, publicly and privately, than any other ruling class since, say, Napoleonic times. Yeah, I just think that's sort of banged, to be honest. So I definitely liked a lot about this book. Like, I have a lot of highlighted moments in here that I really liked, but I didn't like it enough, like at all. Like there were just things that really lost me throughout this, so I ended up giving it 2 stars. So the next thing I read was this comic called Bolero, and this comic was really cool. It basically followed this girl who was previously in this relationship with this other girl, and they were just like so in love with each other, and then they end up breaking up, and it like completely alters her life, and she's going through a really rough time even years after this breakup. And so she's kind of just really self-sabotaging, and she ends up sort of meeting this guy who she confides in, and she's like, yeah, I'm miserable, LOL. And he's like, well, do you really want like a do-over? Like I can help you with that. And she doesn't really know what he's talking about, but she's desperate and takes him up on his offer. And he basically like brings her to this place where like she's basically offered to like leave her current life and live in a different reality, and if she doesn't like that reality that like has been chosen for her, she can change it. I think it says 53 times, and then like she can't change it anymore, which I think is such a cool concept. Like here it says, it's like a cosmic musical chairs type scenario. You might seem different to them at first, but really it'll be like you never left. So if you take the key, you'll never be able to return to your original world. And so she does. It's just really interesting. I find that concept like so cool, especially following someone who's so desperate to leave her current life and her current reality and actually taking up that offer. But that's where this comic ends, the first one, so I would love to continue this series. I think I gave this 5 stars. Oh, just kidding. I gave this 4 stars. I don't remember why, but I did. But I really liked it. I thought it was so cute. It was queer. It was adorable. The back of it looks like the Phoebe Bridgers album. So yeah, I had a good time with this one. The next thing I read was Paybacks, a Witch, and I really liked this one. I put this off for a while because I was planning to read it like kind of around October, and then I never got around to it, and then I was like, okay, I guess I have to wait till next October. But then I just randomly decided to pick it up, and honestly I'm so glad I did. I found this really interesting. It basically follows our main character Emmy, and she's from this town called Thistle Grove, and basically, imagine if y'all have seen Vampire Diaries. Like, you know how in Vampire Diaries the town has like founding families? So that's kind of like how it is here. So the witches in this town, there's like founding families of the main 4 witches who created this town. So basically, Emmy goes back to Thistle Grove. She moved out of Thistle Grove because her family, she thinks, is like pretty insignificant when it comes to all the other families in the town. So she just really felt like she never belonged and she just wanted to leave. And so she eventually comes back because there's like this sort of like tournament that happens, and her family serves as like the arbiters of this tournament, and she's next in line to be the person to do it. And so she comes back to serve with her family, and it's so fun. So basically when she comes back, you're introduced to Talia, who is one of the witches, a part of one of the 4 houses. So Emmy's a part of one, Talia's a part of one. Emmy's best friend that you're introduced to, Lyndon, is a part of another. And then this boy, I don't remember his name, he's so irrelevant. I mean, he's not irrelevant, but he's this guy, right? And he has like screwed over all 3 of these girls, and the 3 girls sort of come together to concoct this plan of like not cheating, but finding a way to make sure that his family doesn't win. And this is also because his family always wins these competitions, and when you win the competition you gain more like magic and more like prestige in the town, and his family has like totally exploited it and they're all sick and tired of it. And it's just really fun because you like go through this like competition, but you also get this really fun dynamic between Emmy and Talia. They start like catching feelings for one another, and also Emmy and her friend Lyndon, who she like left for years, and now they're like getting back in touch. And it's really cool too because they all like kind of have different aspects and elements to their magic, so it's fun to see that be explored. I just thought it was really sweet, and I really feel like it wrapped up really well, especially because like it's really a big sort of coming of age for Emmy. Like, she left this town, she left her magic and everyone she loves behind because she felt like unwanted and unwelcome, and then she comes back and she's like reminded of why she loves this place so much and why it is her home. And so I don't know, I just think it wrapped up really well and I just liked it so much. And this is also gonna have a sequel, but it's following 2 other characters that are pretty like insignificant in this book. So I don't know if I'm like super interested in it, but I probably will read it just because of Talia and Emmy. Oh my gosh, Talia is like one of my new favorite characters. She is so cool. She could literally step on me and I would ask her to do it again. This was fun for me. I liked it a lot. I gave it 4 stars. The next thing I read was a play I had to read for class, which is called Oleana by David Mamet, and this kind of sucked. Okay, I gave this play 2 stars because basically like the whole premise of it is that like there's this professor and this student, and that's the only characters in the play, and they're kind of like having this conversation in the beginning where you're unsure like what's going on at first, like so unsure, and then things just get like more and more progressively strange and odd and just really weird. I just used like 3 synonyms, like I could have just said 1 word. Anyway, basically it follows like this professor, like this teacher and the student, and basically like she's like, I don't understand your work, your book that you made us all buy, this class, like why are you so pretentious? I don't understand this. And then he's like offering her extra help. So at first I was kind of interested in this conversation about education in the beginning because he was sort of being very accommodating towards her and being like, you know, it's fine if you don't get it, like let's look at it a different way. But then it got progressively stranger. It kind of explored like this allegation of him like being inappropriate with her and other people, other students, that you didn't see on page. So it really left it up to interpretation of like, who are you gonna believe? And at the end it becomes like violent, and honestly I feel like this isn't really a productive play in any sense, and I really feel like it almost like served as a like warning to watch out for these type of women and to like sympathize with people who are falsely accused, mostly men. And I don't know, like obviously I don't know the author's intent, but we had a really interesting conversation about it in class. But what really kind of made me like feel how I felt even more was that and this is a bit of a spoiler in case you care, but my professor shared with us that basically in one of the performances in London of this play, basically at the end of the play, the professor hits the student, and in one of the performances in real life, while he's doing this, the audience, like the men in the audience literally were like cheering and clapping and like screaming like, kill her, kill her. Literally, oh my god, it actually like scares me to think about that. Like that just, I couldn't imagine being the woman playing that student. Like that would be so traumatizing. So I don't know, I feel really weird about it, but that sort of was the point, because we were studying like reader response. But yeah, I don't know, I gave it 2 stars because I was reading a lot of reviews and some people did have things that were positive that I agreed with. I could totally see how people could like some parts of it, but yeah, I don't know, it wasn't for me. Okay, so the next 3 books I read were the 3 books that follow The Giver. The Giver quartet is 4 books including The Giver, and they all are like companion novels, but they're not like follow-up novels to The Giver, if that makes sense. So I read The Giver in the fall and I reread it, and I found out there were books that came after it and I was super interested because I love The Giver. But I did some research before buying them, and a lot of people were saying, you know, it's not like a continuation of The Giver, it's almost like a whole new story. And I was like, ooh, I don't know how I feel about that. But I had a lot of free time in March because I was working on a show and there was just like a lot of downtime for me. And so I decided to read these because I thought it would be like a really easy read. So the first book that comes after The Giver is Gathering Blue. Now, Gathering Blue is like the one book that I would say like completely doesn't reference The Giver and that universe at all. It's completely different. It's in a different sort of like neighborhood. We follow Kira, and she's a disabled character, and basically like in her community, and if you're familiar with The Giver, it's like a very like dystopian sort of setting where they basically like have this perfect town, but there's like really weird rules. Like you can only do things at certain ages. At age 12 you get assigned your like life job. One of the jobs is to be like a birth mother, so you just give birth, but it's all very like artificial. It's very strange. So in Gathering Blue, Kira's neighborhood, if you will, completely lacks like compassion, and basically there's like these beasts that live in the forest that the higher ups in the community, if you will, basically like will threaten people who do wrong to go into the wilderness and get attacked by beasts. It's so hard to explain and have it sound normal, but basically because Kira is disabled, they see her as worthless and unmarriable. Is that a word? Basically not able to marry because no one will want her. It's really fucked up. And so one of the community members wants to get rid of her and throw her into the woods to the beasts. So they end up like going to the higher ups, having this whole meeting, but then they don't do that to Kira because Kira has a special skill of sewing. And this all happens because her mother just passed away. So Now she doesn't have like a guardian, so now everyone's like, yeah, we don't want you here. And basically, long story short, Kira has this ability to sew and like embroider, and they basically use her because of that. And throughout this story, you learn that she and other different sort of artists are taken under the care of this, you know, this higher up society, because they have these skills. And so these young people and artists are like exploited for this town. I actually really liked following the story of this book because there were a lot of like mysterious aspects, sort of like in The Giver, where you're unsure of what this community is really up to and what are their morals and why are these people acting like this. So I did find it really interesting, and I really liked Kira as a main character. I just really liked her a lot. So I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars. I rounded it up to 4. Then we move on to Messenger. So Messenger is the shortest book out of this quartet, and this follows Maddie, and Maddie is this boy who we meet in Gathering Blue. Maddie is friends with Kira, and Maddie is like younger boy, and he lives on this like really dirty, poor side of town. And he basically goes to do Kira a favor and goes to visit this other neighborhood to get the color blue for Kira, because as the first book says, they're gathering blue. So that is very literal. They didn't have like a lot of the color blue for Kira to sew into things. So Maddie goes and gathers the blue. So in the third book, it follows Maddie as he goes and lives in a different community. And this is where it sort of ties in the previous 2 books. So I really like this one a lot. It follows Maddie. He's in this really productive community, and Jonas is in this community, and it's basically like, it's almost like a rehabilitation community, because all the like misfits and people who were treated really badly in their old communities come to this new one. And so you find out that this is where Jonas and Gabe have landed and made a life, which is really interesting. And in this book, it really centers a lot around these special abilities that these people have, because we know that Jonas from The Giver has had the special ability to like see beyond, and there's just certain people who have these special abilities. And so Maddie, because he's from a different community and he's used to going and frolicking in the woods, he is the only one who the woods really accepts and lets him go back and forth between these places. And he starts to learn his ability through this. In this book, there were a lot of like underdeveloped plot lines. I also felt that way in Gathering Blue, but it was sort of like okay that it was like a bit of an open ending, because you know, you knew certain things would be explored in the next books. And this one I really liked. I really liked Maddie. I liked that things were starting to tie together, but I did definitely feel like the loose plot lines in this book frustrated me a little more than in the previous book. But I still really like this one. I gave it the same rating, 3.5, and I rounded it up to 4. Okay, so the last one is Sun, and this is the longest one. I feel like even though this actually got the lowest rating out of all 4, it is one of my favorite storylines we follow, because this book is basically broken up into 3 books. So you're following this girl, Claire, who is from Jonas's original community, which I loved, because I loved being back in Jonas's community. Like, I just really was so intrigued. It just brought me back, you know? And Claire is a few years older than Jonas, and she was assigned to be a birth mother. And so it follows her journey as she was assigned to be a birth mother, and then she has complications with her birth, and she gets reassigned, but she actually like goes and tries to form a bit of a relationship with her baby. And she does this in a really secretive way, because it's totally not allowed. And you find out that, and this isn't really a spoiler, this is like pretty much the plot of the book, that Claire is Gabe's mother, which Gabe is Jonas's like brother that he took to this new community when he escaped. And I just loved that it followed Claire, and she was like feeling all these feelings for her son, and you just got to see this other perspective of like what was happening to another person while Jonas's storyline was happening. This one was just like super emotional, and I just really liked it a lot. And then eventually in book 2, it kind of explores what happens to her after Jonas leaves the community, and like the whole community changes. And the stakes are really high for Claire. She basically gets like relocated somewhere. She has to like totally find her way back into herself. She loses a lot of her memories, and eventually she does remember about her son, and she goes to like find her son, and it is really beautiful. My problem with all of this was book 3 and the ending. Oh my god, what a flop. This is the last book of the series, like, you know, the last one. Like, why wouldn't you end it with a bang, you know? And it was really cool, you know, in book 3, Gabe was introduced, you know, he's like more of a teenager now, and like the stakes were really raised at the end. Like, so much was happening, and oh my god, I just wanted to like keep reading because like it was so interesting. And then right at the end, the most anticlimactic ending I've ever experienced. Like, oh my god, so frustrating. It just makes me so mad. It's like, you know, when like books have kind of shitty endings, but the rest of the book was so good that you can kind of see past it a little bit. No, this book was really good, and the ending literally ruined it. The rest of the book was so good, and still the ending was so crappy that it literally just tarnished the rest of the book. It was so disappointing. I was so upset about it, like, especially because it was the end of a series. Like, it's not even just the ending of one of the books, like in the middle, like it's the ending, like this is it. I just feel like it could have been done way better. Like, I got the idea, but no, it's a no for me. So because I enjoyed a majority of this, like I really liked the first 2 books, I ended up rating this 3.5 stars, but I rated it down to 3 stars. So that was my journey with the Giver Quartet. I am really happy that I read all of it because I've always been really curious about what comes after the Giver. All right, the last book I read this month was Normal People by Sally Rooney. Yes, I finally read Normal People. This is my first Sally Rooney book ever, and I do have thoughts. Honestly, I never had the intention to read this book ever. I just found it at a Target repackaged for $7, so that's why I bought this originally. And I really did want to know, you know, the Sally Rooney hype. I wanted to get it, but I was just unsure if I would like this. You know, there's just so many mixed reviews, and I didn't think the plot would really interest me. I was just really on the fence. But I read this and I was pleasantly surprised. I could totally see why this is a book that people either love or hate, but surprisingly I ended up liking this like a decent amount. It basically follows the 2 main characters, Connell and Marianne, and they have this just really weird, unconventional relationship, and it spans a lot of their lifetime. And I feel like what I like about this that a lot of people enjoy is it wasn't cliche. It just felt really real and raw, and even at times when it was frustrating, it was just like, okay, like, yeah, that's life. And I do feel like there's a sort of pull that Sally Rooney gives to their relationship that makes you like enamored, because I wasn't so much invested in the relationship as much as the characters themselves and their like inner monologues and how they navigated relationships, and this relationship in particular. It was just really interesting. I also really liked Sally Rooney's writing style. I just like that it was to the point, but also, you know, really realistic. I just really appreciate forms of media like this, like books and movies that can like spark this conversation or this like internal dialogue about like whether or not these sort of relationships are worthy to show or make sense. This reminds me a lot of the energy of 500 Days of Summer. I love that movie. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I remember loving it because it had this like really kind of not so happy ending, and it just felt real to me. So I feel like in this book, this like weird relationship they have, this like will they, won't they, this cat and mouse thing they have going on, it feels justified and like welcomed in a way. I ended up giving this 4 stars, and I would totally be into reading more Sally Rooney. I liked her writing a lot. Alright, well that is all for my March wrap up. Let me know if you read any of these books or just what you read in March, and I'll see you very soon in my next video. Bye guys!